I'm Jenni Carlson.
I'm Barry Trammell. Welcome to the Jenni and Berry Show. The Thunder has taken a commanding 2-0 lead in its playoff series against the Pelicans, and OKC did so with an impressive 124-92 victory Wednesday night.
What was most impressive about it? The offense of gilgeous-alexander and Chet Holmgren, the defense of Lu Dort. We'll talk about all that and more. But first, we want to say thanks to these sponsors for supporting the Jenni and Berry Show. MidFirst Bank, Next Gen Roofing, Two Fellas Movers, the Oklahoma Ford Dealers Association. Drive into your best in Oklahoma Ford dealers today for the best deals on Ford's full lineup of trucks and SUVs. Ford is the best in Oklahoma. And we want to encourage you to subscribe to our show. Just hit that subscribe button on YouTube. It definitely helps us to help you. So subscribe today. All right, Barry, Wednesday night, game 2 at Paycom Center. You and I were there. Loud, active crowd. They were a lot more excited than they were in game 1 because they got to see a Thunder blowout of the Pelicans. So top of the list for you. What impressed you most from game 2?
You know what? It's something I don't think we even talked about last night was the Thunder starters. The bench didn't play all that great. I was looking at it. Bench points for the Thunder, 16 total. Only 3 bench guys scored. You know, usually it's 11.
Yeah.
And Thunder's bench, they didn't screw around. They didn't play bad, but they just didn't do that much. Those starters were fantastic. Dort, 15 points. Santa Clara, 21 points. Holmgren, 26 points. Giddey, 13 points. SGA, 33 points.
Yeah.
All of them shooting well. The worst shooting was Giddey, 4 of 9. Those, the start SGA's 13 of 19. Santa Clara, 10 of 17. Holmgren, 9 of 13. The Thunder starters were spot on.
Yeah, definitely lots to like on the offensive end. I'm going to go with Lu Dort's defense. Again, locking down Brandon Ingram with Zion Williamson sidelined with that hamstring injury. We knew that Brandon Ingram was going to have a big series. Score probably, upper 20s, low 30s on a pretty regular basis. Dort once again held him below 20 points. Ingram only got off 10 shots all night, Barry. His shooting percentage was better than game 1, but to only have 10 shots in a game and in a situation where everybody knows that Ingram's going to have to shoot a lot, I thought it was just continued impressive defense by Lu Dort. And, without Ingram being able to score, probably 10 or 12 more points than he's been scoring in these first 2 games, it's going to be really hard for the Pelicans to keep up. CJ McCollum's trying to carry a heavy load, but he's just not the style of player that can sort of carry a team on a consistent basis. They've got some other nice role players offensively, but without Ingram, they're just really in a tough spot. And Lu Dort has made life miserable for Brandon Ingram. I think you and I talked at one point last night during the game, as we sit here on Thursday morning, that Brandon Ingram just had the look of a guy that was tired of dealing with Lu Dort, and the prospect of doing it for 2 or more nights, just he didn't look like he was that enthused about that.
Yeah, a couple things. One is the Pelicans were committed 8 offensive fouls, most of them on illegal screens, and that's the sign of frustration, trying to get guys free. Thunder's a difficult team to screen because they got guys like Santa Clara and Dort and even SGA that go over the top. They don't go under many screens. That's a way to draw a lot of fouls, illegal screens, and the refs got whistle happy. The other thing is, I wonder if Brandon Ingram's healthy. He up until down the stretch last week or so of the regular season, he wasn't playing, and what we haven't seen him do is he's great at just, even when he's well guarded, just rising up and shooting, because you can't contest the shot very well because he's so long. He's got a high shooting motion, plus he's 6'8", got a big advantage over Dort, and he's just not even trying that. I think it's possible that he's just worn out and not healthy, and as you said, on the verge of saying, hey, this is a ditch we're going to die in.
Yeah, and it's not to say that he might have a resurrection type of game 3 or even game 4 down in New Orleans. Obviously heading home, it might change some things, but yeah, he just looks very downtrodden at this point, and frankly, the Pelicans do too. Let's take a 20,000-foot view before we dig into Game 2 a little bit more. Now that the Thunder's up 2-0, and what we saw in the first two games, does it feel like a sweep is now increasingly realistic in this series?
Well, I'm always leery of calling for a sweep because it's so hard to beat a team on the road and beat a team twice in a row on the road. I will say this. The Pelicans might have the worst home court advantage in the NBA. They did not have great success this season in home games. Among good teams, I think they had the worst. I think they had the worst record in the NBA in terms of home.
Yeah.
So I thought it's not a great situation. Saturday afternoon, 2:30. I don't know that that's perfect for the Pelicans. I don't know. It's quite possible we'll have a sweep. Thunder's clearly better, but I do think that that New Orleans will find a way to win one of these two games in New Orleans.
Yeah, and New Orleans obviously not a huge market, so struggling to get fans. Obviously, when they're good, I think they do draw better. But obviously, coming off of a not great performance in Game 2, a blowout loss for the Pelicans, you wonder, are fans going to be as fired up to go? Are they, maybe if they even had tickets before, they're going to say, I don't really think so. It's a nice Saturday afternoon. Do you rather stay outside and enjoy the New Orleans weather, or do you head down to the arena for the game? I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see what that crowd looks like on Saturday afternoon. I think the Pelicans need that kind of emotional infusion that a good home crowd could provide them. But frankly, that's why I'm not super concerned about this being this Thunder Bunch's first road playoff experience. Obviously some of these guys have played playoff series before. SGA with the Clippers before he arrives in Oklahoma City. They had the bubble experience, which clearly didn't have any road games involved. But this is clearly, for this nucleus, this group, this is going to be a new experience. But as far as road playoff experiences, I think this is the one you ease into. I mean, if your first playoff experience is at, I don't know, Denver, or Salt Lake City is a great road environment. There's some great road environments in the West, but I don't think I think this is road environment light on Saturday.
Yeah, and like I said, they're not a very good home team anyway. The Pelicans 21-19 at home this year, 28-14 on the road.
Huh?
Now, that's crazy.
It is.
That a team like New Orleans has a better record on the road than at home. I don't think anybody else, the only team other than New Orleans that can say that are our good friends in Washington. The Wizards had a slightly better, and Memphis did too. So maybe it's something about the Mississippi River. So I don't know, but it's not ideal for the Pelicans. New Orleans is going to look back at Game 1 where they could have stole one. Thunder played very poorly, didn't shoot well, got back on track. It's going to be very difficult, I think, now for the Pels to make a run in this series.
I thought it was interesting after Game 2 to hear some of the conversation, some of the comments from Thunder folks about, sort of how they approach this mentally going into Game 2, sort of the understanding that, if they were in the Pelicans' shoes, they realize how close they were to stealing a game, how motivated those guys would be. I think we saw the Thunder match that motivation. I think, they came out with great energy, great force. They definitely didn't allow the Pelicans to sort of build on some early success. And Barry, let's dive into that early success. It was a one-man show. It was the Lithuanian Travis Kelce. And I put that in our notes because I didn't want to have to look up Jonas Valanciunas' spelling this early in the morning. But 11 points before 3 minutes into the game. Unbelievable start for Valanciunas. And then we saw his nemesis now, Chet Holmgren, step up to the plate, go toe-to-toe with him. What a matchup that was early in the game on Wednesday night.
Yeah, the first 6 possessions for New Orleans, Valanciunas scored on 5 of them at a 3-point play and missed a shot on the other one. and you thought they're going to just go to him every time because the Thunder at that point was willing to just play one-on-one defense and not dig in with Santa Clara or Dort or somebody coming in and trying to swipe the ball. They ended up varying their defense some, but they also realized that Holmgren was not. He wasn't making it easy. A couple of those were actually difficult shots. I think he made like a reverse layup. Valanciunas did. He was so fired up, he got really animated about it because he knew, hey, I don't do that every day. But the problem New Orleans faced was that Holmgren himself got hot, and Holmgren caught Valanciunas in scoring midway through the first quarter. And 6-something left in the first quarter, he gets to 11 points. He gets to 13 with 5-something left on the clock. So it's Valanciunas needed to win that matchup scoring wise, and it wasn't going to happen. He ended up, I think, what did he finish? Valanciunas finished with 18, I think,
18,
or maybe 19. Yep. And Holmgren gets all the way to 26 and has all the plays that we so memorable. But it was once the Thunder sort of stabilized and realized, hey, Valanciunas isn't going to beat us by himself. And it got back to the norms of New Orleans with McCollum and Ingram, and just wasn't going to work out for him on that night.
Yeah, and let's not forget what Chet Holmgren's going up against here. Yeah, Valanciunas has never been an All-Star, never been an All-NBA guy, so we're not talking about, David Robinson or Tim Duncan here. We're not talking about a great center of that ilk. But what we are talking about is a guy who outweighs Chet Holmgren by, I don't know, Barry. The rosters say that Valanciunas is 265 and Chet Holmgren is a little under 210. I guess I'll buy that for Chet Holmgren. I'm not buying that for Jonas Valanciunas. I think he's at least 280, so I think they're underreporting by at least 15 pounds.
Yeah, Valanciunas, I weigh about 210 most of the time. I can't see him being just 55 pounds more than me. I think it's significant more than that. I don't know to what extent that Valanciunas can create more advantage for himself with the bulk and the weight and the muscle. He's gotten about all he can out of that, and it's still not enough.
Yeah.
Holmgren, you pointed out, I ended up writing about it. One of the signature plays last night was, Valanciunas muscling in and sort of lowering the shoulder and sort of pushing Chet out of the way. And he did it 3 straight times on the same possession. And finally, he popped Chet pretty good and got him off his mooring. He had to take a step back. Valanciunas goes up for a little easy shot. But that separation allowed Holmgren to spring and jump up and block the shot.
Yeah.
So he's tough. Holmgren's tough to play against even when you're dominating because of that length and those shot blocking instincts. So I think that was a case of Valanciunas sort of realizing, hey, this is not going to be easy. When I can physically dominating, it's still not going to be easy.
Yeah, and Holmgren's skill obviously showed, but here's another thing that showed that wasn't no box score will show this. The dude is tough, Barry. He took the pops from Valanciunas again and again and again. He did it in game 1. He did it in game 2. I have no doubt that he'll have to take it again in game 3 because that's Valanciunas' game, is to physically try to muscle his way to things in the paint. And sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. But even no matter the outcome, there's still the punishment. There's still the physicality that Chet Holmgren has to absorb. And this is a guy that, a year ago, 18 months ago, at the most, we thought, man, this guy's going to get broken in half by guys like Jonas Valanciunas. Wrong answer. He has stood up to Jonas Valanciunas and, other players like him in the NBA. That's been a fun chess match to watch as these first 2 games have unfolded. Will be interesting to see what more New Orleans may try to do to take advantage of that bulk down in the paint come game 3. But Barry, you mentioned this earlier, the excellence of the starters, and that includes Chet Holmgren, but also SGA, Jalen Williams, and Santa Clara Williams. All 3 of those starters shooting over 50%, and we saw them get some good shots in game 1, some good looks that didn't go down. So were they getting better shots in game 2 to shoot that much better? Or was this just a case of those guys knocking down shots that, frankly, they got similar looks game 1?
I think most of them were similar. I don't think there was a massive difference. The Thunder, as in game 1, did a good job in transition and scored quite a few points that way before the New Orleans defense set up. The Pelicans play good defense.
Yeah.
I mean, they got a bunch of guys with long arms and can move their feet. Herbert Jones is fantastic. Trey Murphy's getting better. Even Brandon Ingram, he's got the big wingspan, and he does a nice job of at least bothering you. And C.J. McCollum is a veteran defender, and Valanciunas is, the big guy in the middle. So they got the bones of a really good defense, and they've got the strategy. I mean, I think Willie Griffin's done a nice job getting those guys to play defense, but there's only so much you can do to take things away. The Thunder missed a bunch of those three-pointers on Sunday night. Didn't miss many last night. The Thunder starters on three-pointers go, we're looking at 12 of, 23. 12 of 23 from deep for the Thunder starters. That's hard to beat. And so those guys, Lu Dort was fantastic. He's 4 of 6. SGA was 3 of 5. Holmgren 3 of 6. I think Chet it was after the game Wednesday night was talking about game 1 and said, he said, I made my first one and then I threw up 4 bricks in a row. So he knows he was sort of off, and he ended up being, really good. So NBA players like to say it's a make or miss league. Isaiah Joe said it as recently as this week. I don't necessarily agree with that. I don't think Lu Dort agrees with that because he feels like he can make you miss. But there is an element of variability, an element of luck, of just randomness on three-point shooting. Sometimes they go in, sometimes they don't. The best putters in the world are going to miss from 21 feet a whole lot more than they're going to miss from 4 feet. So we saw the Thunder on the top of their game shooting game 2, not so much game 1.
Yeah, and I have to think in some regards it builds on itself. The other night when, let's go with that Chet Holmgren comment about, making his first and then missing several. You start missing and then other guys see that and it kind of becomes, it catches almost. And I felt like last night in some ways it caught again, but for the good. You saw guys, looking confident, shooting shots that we've seen them shoot all year, making them more often than not. I thought there was sort of a rhythm that the Thunder was able to get into as they started to see the ball go down and realize that, they weren't having to do a ton different than they did in game 1. There were adjustments made. I'm sure there were some different looks, some different motions and those sorts of things that freed them up. But there had to be something psychological when things are going that well and they realize, hey, it's not like we had to reinvent the wheel here to try to make these kind of shots. We just had to knock them down. And so that momentum really seemed to build on itself last night. Not just the starters, but we saw Isaiah Joe hit some shots. Like you said, Barry, maybe the bench didn't get as much production, but I didn't necessarily feel all that bad about it. It just felt like the starters, were really, really on fire last night offensively. And by the way, they played a long time into this game. You kept almost like elbowing me in the side with how long Mark Daigneault left his starters in there in the fourth quarter.
Well, and then when he finally got to take the starters out, he put in the second team. He put in Wiggins and Wallace and all those guys that have been playing. Isaiah Joe. He didn't go down to the Ousmane Dieng and Lindy Waters. I'm thinking these guys. Hey, you got to protect these guys. I got to find out what the heck he was doing there. I don't know what he was doing there, but it was a really good game for the Thunder. You mentioned the offense, the way it's flowing, and it just looked better. That's true. The Thunder averages 34.2 three-pointers a game. They only shot 29 last night, and the offense was flowing, and they were making them. And, if you're the Warriors or Boston or somebody, you always want to get up at, the high volume three-pointers. The Thunder's not necessarily always that way. When I see 29 attempts from deep, in a good offensive night, that tells me they're getting to the rim a lot. They're getting out in transition. They're getting good shots other places. So I just think that whole offense was humming pretty good last night.
Yeah, it definitely was in a lot of different areas. Hey, before we talk about one last thing related to officiating, which here we are after a second game with an officiating kerfuffle, but Lu Dort's defense, I feel like, even though we've talked about it, even though we've written about it, even though we've celebrated it, do people truly appreciate how good a defender this guy is?
I think the players do. I don't know if you saw the athletic poll that came out this week. They polled 100, I think it was 132 NBA players, which is approximately, 30% of the league, 28, 29% of the league. So a big chunk of the league.
Yeah.
And Lu Dort got the third most votes for best defender. And that's behind Wembanyama and Drew Holiday.
Drew Holiday, yeah.
And Dort is not, SGA mentioned this in the postgame, Dort's omission from all NBA defensive accolades so far in his career.
Yeah.
And, Damian Lillard last spring, they asked him who's the best defender in the league on you. He said it's Lu Dort. And so I think the players are really high on Dort. I don't know that the metrics, the analysts, the deep thinkers of the NBA, the people who vote on a lot of the awards, they study these numbers, and I don't know that the numbers are always as good to Dort as maybe the eyeballs. So maybe that's part of it that keeps him out. But clearly the players have a high regard for Lu Dort. And of course, we know that the Thunder in-house, from Mark Daigneault, Sam Presti, to everybody in between, has a very, very high regard for Lu Dort's defense.
Yeah, for sure. And you wonder if a playoff series or two where Lu Dort gets to play lockdown defense on the best scorer on the court raises that stature. I got to think that people around the league are watching what he's doing to Brandon Ingram right now and saying, whoa, this is serious.
That's where you make your reputation, is in the postseason. And, Dort got to play in that 2020 bubble, the 7-game series in Houston, where he played great as a rookie, helped keep James Harden in check. But this was his first playoff game since then.
Yeah.
And he's had 2 chances. He'll have some more. So, yeah, I think his stock will rise, but the postseason is really where you make your reputation, no doubt about it.
For sure. Yeah, and I thought it was interesting, too, one other side note on Lu Dort's defense. I actually asked Shai Gilgeous-Alexander about Lu Dort and his defense. What more can you possibly say about this guy? But I thought SGA made an interesting point. He said, when you've got a guy out there individually playing as hard as Dort plays, as committed as Lu Dort is defensively, it's hard for the other 4 guys on the floor not to try to match that defensive intensity. Now, they may not be as good defensively as Lu Dort is, but they've got some very capable defenders. And when they see that effort that Lu Dort has, and then, feel like, hey, if he's going to go out there and play this way every single moment he's on defense, I got to step it up too. So I don't know if anybody can match what he does as far as effort, but it's a great point that SGA made, that it really is a trickle down impact that Lu Dort has, just that effort that everybody looks and says, hey, Lu's going hard. I got to go harder. I got to try to match this. And we've seen some really good defense out of this team. So I think there's something to be said for the Lu Dort effect on the Thunder defense. Hey, lastly, Barry, before we get out of here, Game 1, we saw a bit of an officiating kerfuffle with a coach's challenge late in that game where Mark Daigneault challenged a jump ball because he said in large part he had done something similar early in the season, and even though he didn't retain possession, he retained his challenge because the jump ball was overturned. He thought, well, I've got a good chance, even if I don't win this challenge outright, to still retain my timeout, my challenge. Turns out the same result happened. The jump ball was overturned, but given to the Pelicans. But in this instance, he lost his challenge. So, what's the rule? He was curious about that. Well, then last night, game 2, Chet Holmgren, foul on the first possession of the game that apparently the review center said, no, that's not his foul. That's actually Jalen Williams' foul. But Mark Daigneault and pretty much everybody else at the scores table in the arena thought that when Chet Holmgren picked up a foul midway through the second quarter, it was his third, and he sat for the remainder of the half. Mark Daigneault didn't find out till later it was only his second. This is a weird one, Barry. I had no idea that the replay center could even do something like that.
Yeah, I didn't know. I still don't understand what's going on. I know this. We both noticed it early. Your play-by-play feed had the foul on Santa Clara, Jalen Williams. Mine did too. It was 2 fouls for Holmgren there when he got what Daigneault was the third. We both thought it was the second. But
the announcer said it was the third in the arena.
Yeah, but here's what to me is clearly the problem. When the play happened, I watched the replay, and that's when Valanciunas goes and muscles in and does that reverse layup. And Jalen Williams clearly rakes him across the arm, and that was the foul. And I don't know why there was ever a dispute on that or a confusion. It was clearly on him. Mark Daigneault, here's what could have happened. I think it was 15 seconds into the game.
Yeah.
Daigneault there's a foul called, and it's either on Holmgren or Williams. At that point in time, I don't know that Mark Daigneault really had a preference on who he preferred it to be on. You know, if it's Giddey or somebody, you give the foul to Giddey. If it's Dort in question, don't give it to Dort. We need Dort on the court, that kind of thing. But it's a sort of a wash between you don't know how the game's going to go. So if they say, well, the foul's on Chet, he'd think, well, okay, they're not going to play Valanciunas 30 minutes, so we'll take our chances there. But then later in the game, the fouls start mounting, and somebody says, hey, that foul was on Jalen Williams. So it was a very strange thing. The replay center being involved is fixing things. I don't know why that message couldn't have been conveyed much earlier, because it was conveyed on the official stats much earlier than what apparently Mark Daigneault found out.
Yeah, and didn't know throughout the last half of the second quarter. I mean, when he sets Chet Holmgren, he doesn't just set him for a minute, he sets him for the rest of the half, which obviously, as it turned out, it didn't have a detrimental effect on the Thunder. They won handily, and even though Chet Holmgren didn't play, they were still in great shape come halftime. But Mark Daigneault said after the game, had he known it was only 2, he would have been, totally different. Chet Holmgren doesn't come out of the game. He stays on the floor. So, I'm with you, Barry. I don't know how we had better information than Mark Daigneault and the Thunder bench had. That just seems seems kooky that somebody in an official capacity wasn't alerted and then they weren't alerted. I don't quite understand how that breaks down so badly that nobody that's making decisions on the Thunder bench knew what was going on there.
You're right, but Jacko, kooky things happen in a basketball game and sometimes even the NBA. I don't know if you remember this game. This Billy Donovan is a regular season game. Billy Donovan's coaching. It had to be the last. I don't think it was the bubble year, but it might have been. Who knows? 19 or 20, somewhere in there. And the Thunder is playing a tight game against somebody, and I think it was the opposing team took a 3, and up goes the official's arms. Except I happened to the one time in my life I was actually watching somebody's feet, and the guy was clearly on the line, and I reached down to Matt Tumbleson and said, "Hey, Matty, that guy's foot was on the line." He said, "Yeah, we'll need to check. We'll check that." Well, at the next time out, they'll check it. So there's like 8 minutes left in the game. We get down to 3 or 4 minutes left, and there's a timeout, and they still hadn't checked it. So I said, "Hey, Matty, I thought you were going to check that 3." He said, oh, yeah. So during the timeout, they go and check it, and they wipe it off. And they take a point off the opposition, and the Thunder wins like by 1 point or something.
That was your win, Barry.
That was my win. So after the game, I'd say, Billy, I deserve a little credit for this. Here's what happened. And I wish that'd been Daigneault, because Daigneault would have been fascinated by the process, and he'd have said something interesting, and he'd have talked about everything. Billy Donovan said, "Hey, that one's for you," or something. So, my point is, even in something as organized and as important as the NBA, these things happen, and it makes you wonder what happens at Class 2A basketball games in December. There's not a replay center. There's not a college of Cardinals overlooking all this. There's not an army of assistant coaches keeping, no telling what happens in the shadows of basketball. But yeah, that was a strange one. Worked out fine for the Thunder. Ended up giving Chet a little rest, which he probably needed. But he only played 4 minutes and change in the second quarter.
Hey, I think the moral of this story is we need our seats back down by the scores table, so you can elbow Matt Tumbleson when you see somebody's foot on the line.
Somebody's got to be in charge of making sure things run smoothly. If it's got to be me, okay, I'll take the burden. I will take the burden.
There you go. Well, the Thunder Pelicans are back in action on Saturday afternoon. Yes, afternoon, 2:30 p.m. tip time for all you sleep-deprived Thunder fans. You get a reprieve. We'll be covering it. We'll have lots of Thunder Pelicans coverage, but that's all the time we've got right now. We've got all sorts of coverage of the Thunder's Game 1 and Game 2 triumphs at selloutcrowd.com. And you can find our columns, videos, and podcasts there, as well as on our mobile app. Download that mobile app today. If you want our content sent straight to your inbox, sign up for our newsletters. It's free and easy. Just head to selloutcrowd.com and opt in. If this happens to be your first time watching or hearing us, be sure to subscribe to our show on YouTube or your favorite podcast app. And if you like what you hear, please leave us a review. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time.